This is an interview with David Shire recorded August 9th, 1976. The World of Motion Picture Music. This is Cinema Showcase. I'm Dave Schwartz, and tonight we visit with film composer David Shire. The Conversation, All the President's Men, The Taking of Pelham 123, The Hindenburg, and Farewell My Lovely. These are just some of the many film scores of my guest, David Shire. David, welcome to Cinema Showcase.
Nice to be here with you, Dave.
Dave, does the public pay more attention to film scores now than they did 5 years ago?
I think that perhaps they do. As you probably know, there have been a lot of older film music released recently on record that wasn't initially recorded when it was first with the films that it was with, say, music of Korngold, Max Steiner, Franz Waxman, on that wonderful RCA series that Charles Gerhardt has been putting out mostly from England. There seems to be renewed interest, maybe not so much in the film music that's being written now, as in the great film music of the past. So it's nice to see one's own field getting that kind of attention.
Why do they seem to release fewer soundtracks of current movies today?
I don't know if they release fewer ones today. They didn't release that many, say, 30 years ago or 20 years ago. I think there was a period maybe 10 years ago where they were releasing more. I think the basic philosophy of the record company is they're going to release what sells. And if the picture doesn't look like it's going to be a blockbuster, they wait and see before putting out an album. Then if the picture doesn't really take off, they don't bother to put one out at all. So it's kind of the other way around than it was. Instead of them thinking that the album will help sell the picture, they now feel that the picture has to help sell the album.
Speaking of blockbuster movies, you had a blockbuster movie that you did the music to, All the President's Men.
Yes, that was a big movie. Unfortunately, there was only 9 minutes of music in the picture. Maybe it was 11, but much too little to put out an album. We did put out a single, but album was impossible.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the music you did for All the President's Men?
Well, as I said, there's very little in there because that's really all the picture needed. In fact, when they first contacted me about doing the score, and I saw the picture a couple of times, I told them that they really probably needed no music at all. I was so impressed with the picture and respectful of its kind of documentary. Well, I shouldn't say that it isn't a documentary at all, but it has a kind of documentary realism in places that made it difficult for me to think of what kind of music could go with the picture without breaking the mood of it and making it sound like we were trying to artificially hype it. But Alan Pakula, the director, said that he would like me to just try, that we had time and try various approaches, and if they didn't work, you can always leave the music out. So I worked about a month on it and played various ideas for him, and finally after a month we had an approach that we both thought was more probable that it would work than it wouldn't, and we went ahead with that. And I wrote twice as much music for it than is in the picture. We took the approach that we would try music every place that we possibly could. In the places where it worked, we would leave it, say after looking at it at previews. In the places where it didn't, we would take it out. So we wound up with about half of it in, and Pakula really wanted the music to, as he said, be emotional signposts to remind you, however subtly, at various intervals, that these were people with very real emotions going after what they were going after, and he felt the music would hold the picture together emotionally that way, even though it wasn't great in quantity.
How did you get involved with film composing?
It was a cause and effect thing out of television, which was a cause and effect thing out of working in the theater, the musical theater, which started a long time ago back in New York. I mean, my work with it. And piano playing, conducting, doing arranging, kind of first made my living in New York as a jack of all musical trades, as many film composers have a similar background. And one thing led to another, but as it was on a direct line from television scoring.
Did you major in music in high school or college?
Eventually I did it at college. I started out as an English major with music as electives and did a lot of work in the drama school writing music for plays or musicals. And eventually my senior year I switched so that I could do my thesis as a musical composition rather than having to write an English paper.
How about influences? What film composers of the past would you say have influenced your style?
Oh, almost all of them at one time or another. I mean, one of the interesting things about film scoring is that every picture demands kind of a different approach. So if I were doing a score like when I was doing the Hindenburg, say I was more influenced by Bernard Herrmann, a large orchestra approach, and when I did Conversation, which was all scored with a solo piano, I was, I suppose influences were Satie and Chopin and kind of 40s jazz. I mean, it varies. But as far as the classical influences go, pretty much the same ones that a lot of composers would tell you, Ravel, Debussy, Stravinsky especially. And all the great film composers of the past, really, Korngold, and of the present, Johnny Williams, Jerry Goldsmith, I think we all help each other in that we give each other things to listen to that we can use at times. It sounds like a form of plagiarism, but hopefully it's influence.
Our next score we're going to hear is a selection from Farewell My Lovely, a film you did back in 1975.
Yes, that was for director Dick Richards, a Robert Mitchum detective picture based on the Raymond Chandler novel, and it was fun. It was a chance to do kind of a period score, and it was an enjoyable job.
Is it easier doing a period score than a score, let's say, that's based in the present?
Depends on the period. That one was kind of fun because I was familiar with that period reasonably so, and after a little research it started flowing.
What about performances and concerts? I noticed that Henry Mancini does concerts of his film music. Have you thought about that?
Well, I've thought about it. Nobody's really asked me except my hometown, where I went back to appear with the Buffalo Symphony a couple of years ago to do a half an evening of some music from films I had done and some songs I had done for people. You really can't determine whether you're going to have a hobby doing that, so to speak, more than someone asks you to. I haven't had any huge hits that would make people come after me to give concerts. I think after I have hopefully a repertoire of known pieces, known away from the movies, I think I would enjoy doing that very much.
Now you mentioned songs that you've written for other performers. How about going into this? Have you written many songs?
Yeah, I as a composer, I started out as a songwriter. I think first for the off-Broadway shows, and even before that for college musicals, and then I was connected with Barbra Streisand for a while as a pianist and a arranger, and she started doing some songs of mine, Starting Here, Starting Now, What About Today, Autumn. They're scattered over some of the earlier and middle period albums of hers.
Do you still do much songwriting today?
Yeah, in fact, I'm trying to do more songwriting and less film composing. I'm working on a musical with some local writers and a local director, and working on some songs with Kathy Green, who's local girl. You might know of her father, John Green, who's quite a well-known film composer. She's quite a talented singer and pianist and lyricist. She has a record coming out on Motown, of which I did 3 of the songs in collaboration with her. And I'm working a little bit with Norman Gimbel, and have worked with the Bergmans recently. So I'm trying to boost that part of the career.
Okay, we're going to hear 2 songs that you wrote for Barbra Streisand, Starting Here, Starting Now, and I believe the other one is called What About Today? When were these recorded?
See, Starting Here, Starting Now is the finale of the Color Me Barbara television special, which I think was around 65 or 66. And What About Today was around 67, I think, or 68. It was the title song of that album.
We're continuing our Cinema Showcase visit with David Shire, composer of such scores as All the President's Men, Farewell My Lovely, The Conversation. Dave, what point in the production of a movie does the film composer get involved with starting on the music?
Generally towards the latter part of their total production, when they're in what's called a rough cut, when the movie is not quite finished being edited. That trend is that practice is really changing now. I've been called in more before a movie starts shooting, and I know other composers have too. I think they're maybe thinking about what kind of music they want earlier, and I think it helps to have more time to let the project gestate. And it's kind of traditional in the business that the composer, being the last one in, has to work the fastest because it's the only thing left to be done, and they want it. If they have a release date, they want it yesterday, and if they don't have a release day, they want it the day after tomorrow. But I think the more time we have, the farther we can reach, really. But generally, it is towards the end of the production.
About how long do you have generally to put a film score together?
Anywhere, I think average is about 6 weeks, a month if it's a fast job, 2 months if they can give you more time.
How do you decide exactly where in a movie you're going to put the music?
It's kind of a mutual decision of the director, or the director and the producer, who are often the same, and the composer. After I've seen the movie a couple of times by myself and thought about it, then we have what's called a spotting session, where the director, and if the producer is creatively involved, or the editor, and myself all sit in a projection room where the film can be stopped and started and rolled backward and forward. And whenever we get to a place where one of us thinks there should be music, somebody says there, and a music editor is there who keeps track of all the stops and starts that we agree on. Most cues, or many cues, are obvious in the sense that we all agree there should be music starting at that place. Sometimes it's very difficult, though, like on All the President's Men. It took us several long sessions to spot it because there were so many alternative places where I would say I felt there should be music and Bob Redford felt there shouldn't, or Alan felt there should and I felt there shouldn't. So a lot of times you do optional cues, which are cues that you write where one of us may not think it will work, but we try, and then if it doesn't work, it always can be taken out.
Generally, how much of the music that you compose is left in the film?
Usually most of it. I've been lucky in that I haven't had a score thrown out, although practically every important composer in the business has, at one time or another, had even lost a whole score. You know, they have another composer come in and do another score. I'd say generally 90% and up. A few cues are usually dropped by the way during dubbing or after previews, and once in a while you even go in and after previews, and if the production has enough time and money, rescore a few cues, either rewrite existing cues or add cues that you didn't think were needed, but now that you've seen the film with an audience, you feel you should have some.
Now, a couple of years ago, you did a Gene Hackman film called The Conversation. I believe there was a piece of music from that movie released on a single.
Yeah, it was the main theme, so to speak, with a few alterations. Because in the movie, there never was a section long enough where you could play the whole theme at once in a releasable version. So it was the theme in its totality, and I added strings and rhythm section to make more of a pop record out of it.
Is that done often that they actually take a small theme and expand it into like a 3-minute song for 45?
Often you do have to make some adjustments in the theme as it's used in the picture in order to release it as a record. Say, main title of most movies is around 2 minutes or less, whereas a single, as you know, is usually around 2:45, 3 minutes. So generally you go back in and make some adjustments. In case of All the President's Men, the use of the music was so spotty in the movie that I actually had to do a whole new arrangement to make something we could release for popular consumption, because the music was so soft and spotty in the picture itself. So that was almost a complete rearrangement.
In our theme of the conversation we're going to be playing, is there something you'd like us to note? I know it features a piano.
Well, it's me playing the piano, I suppose, if that's important to know or not. And it was, as I've just described, that record that we put together to release from the picture.
How large an orchestra do you generally use on a film when you're composing the film score, when you're conducting it actually?
Again, it varies from picture to picture quite radically. The Conversation was scored with basically one instrument, a piano, although I've filtered it through a synthesizer from time to time. But that was done at dubbing, so really the recording session for that was one man. And then the Hindenburg was 68 men. Farewell My Lovely was about 40, 45. It varies that much. It can be anything really, from 1 to 80 or 90.
We've got a score coming up now that was not released on record that we're going to be using on the show, called The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, that was one of the disaster pictures, about the hijacking of a subway train. I did that right after The Conversation, and after having worked with a solo piano for a couple of months, really 3 or 4 months, I wanted to do a noisy score. So it's kind of jazz-based, and an orchestra which is mostly brass and winds and percussion, trying to capture in a somewhat fresh way, hopefully, the pace of contemporary New York, and a picture that has a lot of violence in it. Play it on.
One of your more recent films was a movie called Harry and Walter Go to New York. Now, it may not have been one of the big films, but it marked a collaboration, I noticed, with Marilyn and Alan Bergman.
Yes, that was very enjoyable. We had been friends for a number of years, but never really had a chance to work together on a film, and that was the first chance we had. It's Harry and Walter are two kind of tacky vaudeville performers, circa 1900, 1890, and the main title of the picture is the two of them doing their act, so we had to write a opening patter song for them, and then an opening number. And that's the way the picture starts. The picture ends with I won't go into the complications of it, but the plot is so constructed that the denouement centers around a kind of a Victorian operetta that's going on a stage under which they're digging a tunnel to the bank which they're going to rob. So they have to keep the curtain of the operetta up until they get the tunnel finished so they're not discovered. So this involves Harry and Walter getting involved in the middle of the opera to try to keep the curtain up. So we had to write portions of the operetta and so that they would have something to interrupt.
Now, what about the song that we're going to hear? The song is called, I believe it's Nobody's Perfect.
Oh yeah, that's the opening number. It's the opening comedy songs, so to speak, that they do. I mean, it was kind of difficult because it's a comedy song, but the humor in the main title is that they're doing it in a carnival tent where nobody's laughing. So whether the number is truly funny or not, I don't think we still know.
David Shire, my guest on this edition of Cinema Showcase, and now in addition to a lot of film music, you've done quite a few different television shows.
Yeah, I have.
How about giving us a rundown of some of the ones that you've actually done the themes to?
Oh, currently The Practice, the Danny Thomas show. A new show starting this fall starring Linda Lavin called Alice, based on Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Did the first year of McCloud before when it was a weekly show before it became part of Mystery Movie. Sarge, a show starring George Kennedy as a priest cop or cop priest. Must be a couple more. Oh, Lucas Tanner, the David Hartman series, which was on last year. Joe and Sons, which lasted a fast 13 weeks. I'm sure there's a few more. I can't think of them right now.
I noticed most of them didn't last past one season.
No, I hope that isn't because of those themes. Sometimes you hit ones that last, and that's what you hope for. It's nice to write something once and have it played for 2 or 3 years rather than have it last for 13 weeks. But a lot of times we have no control over that in the sense that we're given a pilot. And a lot of times it's a guessing game. It is with the network too. You try to pick ones that you think will go. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
How does composing for television differ than composing for motion pictures?
Principally, I would say in fact that we have much less time to work in, so we can't really dig as deep. I think this applies to all craft fields in television. My wife is an actress, and when she's working in television, her complaint is the same as mine. She doesn't have time to really get into the part like you would like to. Either in rehearsal or when they're shooting it, they have to do many more setups a day than you would do in a motion picture, so you have fewer chances to do it as well as you would like. Whereas the average for a film score, as far as time to compose it, is six or 8 weeks. Television, if it's an episode for a series, a 1-hour show, often you have to do it in 5 or 6 days, although you're usually given a couple of weeks or 10 days if they have the time to give you. Many times they don't, because the schedule piles up on a movie of the week that could last an hour and a half or 2 hours, which is the length of a feature really. Sometimes as little as 2 weeks, sometimes a month, but most of the time much less time than you would have to work on a feature. So you have to go with an idea much faster. You don't have as much time to throw away, is the way I describe it often. You're kind of locked in to go with one of the first ideas you get, otherwise you don't get it done in time, and that you know that there's that date and that orchestra that's going to be sitting there and the movie that's waiting for the music, and you just have to go.
Have you had times when the idea just doesn't come and you're racing up to last minute?
Yeah, most of the time, and I think you'll find that true with almost anybody you talk to. It's almost traditional that the night before a scoring session you don't get any sleep. It's that, Parkinson's law. You keep putting it off, and the work expands to fill almost every minute of allotted time.
Are there any advantages then to scoring for television as opposed to scoring for motion pictures?
I don't know if there are. Well, it's a very good apprentice training, because you learn to develop your craft very quickly. You can't indulge yourself with a lot of time or sitting around waiting for the muse. So you learn how to fall back on certain techniques, which which can be quite bad. I mean, that's really what hack work is, when you, instead of finding fresh solutions, you're just repeating old solutions, either of your own or of other people. But as just a training ground to get used to moving your pencil fast and being fluent, I think it has a value there. At least it did for me.
Now we're going to hear a TV theme that you did, the theme from Lucas Tanner. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the theme?
Had to have energy. It's hard to talk about it, you know. It's in the sense that that's already, what, 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, and the problems that had to be faced to come up with it are not on the tip of my tongue. But why don't we just hear it?
Okay, we're going to get back now into motion picture music. One of the other scores that you've done a couple of years ago was a sequel to a Michel Legrand score, The Summer of '42.
Yeah.
Didn't
It was the picture was a sequel to the Summer of '42 picture. I hope my score wasn't a sequel to his score. It was tried to be its own thing, because the story was really entirely different. But there was a kind of a love theme, which again I made a version for hopefully popular consumption, although not that many records were consumed. But it's again for piano and orchestra, and it features Tommy Morgan on harmonica, one of our fine studio artists here.
Were there problems, the fact that Class of '44 was a sequel to Summer of '42, which had such a famous motion picture score? Did you have any problems in your mind getting the score down?
No, because the story of the picture was different. It was different characters in a different setting. So I was scoring the picture. I mean, I was aware of the fact that the original movie had one of the most famous themes of all time from it, and but basically I just tried to do as good a job on the picture I had to score as I could.
Is rock and roll music influencing the direction of film scores today?
I think, well, you know, rock covers such a large variety of, I think what you mean is contemporary music. There's always an input from contemporary music into film scores. Not all scores, because some scores you're doing a more classically based score, but popular music is one of the streams that feeds film music, just as, you know, popular culture feeds the ideas that from which films are made. So I think the answer is yes. Did your question make for a yes or no answer? I can't remember now.
I don't.
There is an influence, yeah.
I don't remember either. But let's go on to the next film score. This was another one of your period films, The Hindenburg.
Yes, that was set in Germany during the rise of Hitler. I think Hindenburg made its last voyage in '37, and the style here is quite classically oriented. The score is kind of nods toward Wagner and Richard Strauss and Mahler in an attempt to have the music be a kind of cultural metaphor for the period. This kind of overblown romanticism that, like the Hindenburg, is light but at the same time very heavy, that floats but at the same time is almost like a souffle that's about to burst and fall to the ground. I guess we're going to hear the main title theme. This was originally written as an aria, a wordless aria for soprano and orchestra. It was originally recorded that way with a very fine singer named Polly Jo Baker, and the movie was previewed with that main title. And this is one of the surprises of, you find out at previews, like one lady asked Bob Wise, told him that she couldn't understand the lyrics, but there weren't any, but she thought that she was missing something. So the consensus was that the title wasn't working in that form, although everyone liked the theme. So I was asked to go back and put the melody on a different instrument. We didn't have the time to go back and record the whole thing, and it would have been tremendously expensive because it involved 68 men. So luckily I had the soprano sing on a separate track. So we removed that, and I rearranged it slightly so that it was played on the trumpet by Tommy Stevens, who's with the LA Philharmonic. So that's the form in which it's on the record. It was quite disappointing because I really preferred the other version, and it was conceived that way. So to me it sounds a little strange with the trumpet and orchestra, but that's the way it is.
How do you feel about private companies like Tony Thomas's record label re-releasing soundtracks that were never available?
I think it's terrific. I have to kind of be careful what I say because as a composer and a film composer and a member of the musicians union, I kind of have a conflict of interest. Some scores it's very hard to re-record because you have to repay the musicians, and the small labels that are trying to release these scores can't really afford to release something that had 60, 70 men, as many of the old scores did. The big orchestras were used much more then than they are now. But certainly as a film composer, it's nice to see that people are so interested in putting out scores that would otherwise be forgotten, and maybe someday I'll be one of the beneficiaries of that. But I think it's great.
Of all the scores you've done now, is there any you would like to see out that was never released?
Yeah, I did a picture called Skin Game. It was kind of the first the first movie I did where I had a large orchestra and did kind of a big semi-symphonic score. I think I used about 50 men, and there's certainly enough music in the picture for a record. Unfortunately, the picture was not a blockbuster, although it did reasonably well, so a record wasn't released, and someday I'd love to see that one out. Also, The Big Bus, which I did recently, picture which I think had a run which was far less than it deserved. It's a strange picture. People either loved it or couldn't stand it, and it's hard to tell yet how long it will run and how well it will do, although it certainly won't be a hit. But I did about 50 minutes of music for that, and it was another score I was quite proud of. Also, Harry and Walter won't be released on a record except for the single because the picture did not do well. But again, 50 minutes of music, and would be nice to have it out on a record.
Now, what's upcoming in the couple months ahead for David Shire?
As we sit here, I'm thinking about the deadline I have for day after tomorrow. I'm recording a score for a 3-hour television movie about the life of Amelia Earhart, starring Susan Clark. After that, I'm redoing the theme for The Practice because the network wants a different approach, a more rock-oriented approach. Even though the show's about a 60-year-old doctor, everyone's got to try to get the contemporary audience, so I'm going to try to figure out some way to have it have some connection with the character but still have it a little more contemporary. Then after that, a Charles Bronson movie called The White Buffalo, which is they're editing right now, and which I'll start on in about 3 weeks.
We look forward to all those scores, and maybe as they come out, we'll be hearing them on the show. We're going to close with one of your early films, the one you mentioned, Skin Game.
Yeah, I think I talked about that. This is the I know I talked about that. This is the chase at the end, big chase. It's a lot of fun to write.